Hello, this is Henry Imler. I'm here to try to answer some of your Unit 7 questions and answers. I know it's Friday and some of you may, at least I'm recording on Friday, and some of you might still be submitting questions, but in order for me to get this done in a timely manner, I had to cut it off at about noon today. So here we go. So the first question is, Judith Jarvis Thomson compares being plugged in to a famous violinist to an abortion. How is that relatable? Those, to me, are two completely different situations. Okay, so this is a great question. A lot of people bring it up when we talk about Judith Jarvis Thomson's article. So here we're reasoning by analogy, and we want to make sure that in an analogous case, the two situations are structurally similar. If they are, then it should follow that we have to use similar reasoning in similar cases. If the cases are not structurally similar, then it would seem to be the case that we don't have to, that we should use different reasoning in different cases. So what we need to do is to say, okay, in what type of case is Judith Jarvis Thomson using the famous violinist? And it's in a particular case. She's not talking about using this reasoning for all possible cases in which someone would want to get an abortion. She is limiting it to cases where the pregnancy was caused by sexual assault, rape. And so now we need to compare the two cases. Are they structurally similar to the degree that we need to use the same reasoning? So, in the violinist case, is the person whose body being used valuable? Yes, it's you or the person who is being hooked up. In abortion cases of rape, yes, it's the mother. The mother's life is valuable. Is the person being hooked up, is their body valuable? I mean, are they valuable? In the violinist case, yes, it's the violinist. We've all said we care about, we value, we like the violinist. In the other case, yes, she says from the beginning. Now, she doesn't actually necessarily think this, but she says, for the purposes of this argument, I'm going to grant that the fetus has full personhood, just like you or me. Even though she says later, I don't think this, but in order to make this argument, let's go ahead and grant this assumption that we disagree on. I'm going to go ahead and grant it to you, and then let's see how the reasoning works itself out. So, you're valuable, the violinist is valuable, the mother is valuable, and the fetus is valuable. So the value of all the participants is the same. So the next one, was consent granted for the use of one's body? In the violinist case, no. The Society of Music Lovers violated your right to consent of the use of your body. And if we have things like property rights, so let's say you have a nice computer and I walk up and say, I'd like to have that computer instead of you, can I take it? Well, you would probably say, no, I have a right to my own stuff. So if that's the case, how much more so do we have a right to the use of our own bodies? It seems like a much more intimate, much more important right. So to violate the consent of like stealing a laptop is wrong. How much more so would violating the consent of the use of one body be a worse harm? Okay, and then in the other case, in the abortion in cases of rape, well, there's sexual assault there. There's no consent given to the use of the body by the person initiating the assault or the resulting pregnancy. So in that case, they're the same. There's no consent in either case. Okay, then the next idea. Does the unhooking of the two beings result in the death of the fetus or the violinist? And in both cases, yes. If you unhook from the violinist dies. If you unhook from the fetus, and unhook is a euphemistic way of referring to it, but we're going to try to keep similar terms here. But I just want to say I understand that. If you unhook from the fetus will die. Now, she says specifically that doesn't mean that if the fetus somehow survives that you can't then go and attack it. So she'll say that. She'll admit that you can't go and then attack the fetus if the fetus is able to live outside the womb. But if it's not, that's not the mother's problem. Because what she is arguing for is there's no consent there. And if there's no consent, then you can withdraw or you can unhook at any time. So the last bit, what's your conclusion in the situation? So if you say in the violinist case that because there's no consent, because you are valuable, because you have a right to decide how your body is used, you can unhook from the violinist at any time. If you say that, then it would seem to be the case that you must then reason in the same way. And in the abortion in cases of rape situation, you would have to say, okay, there's not consent given, even if we assume that the fetus has the same right to life as the mother. And again, some of you may agree with that, some of you may disagree with that, but let's make that assumption just for the sake of this argument. And I know that there's disagreement about that among, well, lots of people. But if you use one reasoning in one case, you have to use the same reasoning in a structurally similar case. And so you would have to say it is morally permissible to unhook, for the mother to unhook from the fetus in cases of rape. If you say that it's morally permissible to unhook from the violinist. Now, if you say, so you could disagree with Thomson and other people and say, look, in the violinist case, my rights have been violated. However, the right to life overrides the inconvenience or the damage of being stuck in that hospital room for 9 months, 7 months, whatever it is. Because the violinist's life is so valuable that you would have to endure that initial harm and then subsequent harm, because you cannot unhook morally. And if you make that case, then you can say, then in the case of abortion in cases of rape, then there is a duty to stay hooked up. But notice, if you reason one way in one case, because they are so structurally similar, you have to reason the same way in the other case. Now, one thing we have to make sure that we remember is that the famous violinist case does not by itself tell us about what we should do in other cases where abortion might be what someone selects. So for example, when the mother's life is in danger, we haven't necessarily addressed that in this case. When reasonable precautions are taken, and there's no overt consent to have a child. So the two participants don't go into the sexual encounter saying, let's try to make a child. And then we have when reasonable precautions are not taken and there's no intent or consent to have a child. Then there is when intent to have a child is present during the sexual act, and then someone changes their mind, so the consent is given and then withdrawn. That's another possible case. When the mother does not have the economic or social resources necessary to care for the child, and this is an important part, and the society, you can say, care so little about life that they do not provide adequate resources to the mother to cover that deficiency. Doesn't cover that case. And then it does not cover cases of abortions where there's embarrassment or inconvenience. And Thomson in her article addresses cases 1, 2, and 5, and 6 and comes to different conclusions based upon the assumption that the fetus and the mother have an equal right to life. So while she allows, and you can disagree with this, but make sure you have to show your reasoning. When the mother's life is in danger, when precautions were taken, even when precautions are not taken, I think, and when the mother does not have the economic resources and the society effectively cares so little that they don't provide resources that would be necessary for poor people to have to take care of their children well. She would say that abortions are okay in those situations, from how I remember reading her. But she does say, notice she does say, number 6, abortions in cases of embarrassment or inconvenience. Given her analysis, if we think the fetus has a right to life, then those would be immoral cases. So anyway, with that, I think that answers the first question. This was kind of long, so I'll separate this as its own video, and then I'll answer the other ones in another video.